Tom Slater is editor at Spiked Online. He is still with me this morning. We've shunted him off to another seat in the corner. He's not been naughty. It's just because we have another top guest in the studio to talk about a story which is still on the front pages of many of the papers, including certainly the Sun newspaper. Schofield affair, the fallout. This morning host to return. Defiant Holly back on Monday. That, though, is perhaps not the most significant story today when it emerges at what's going on at ITV. That, I think, really is ITV bosses being grilled by MPs next week. They were going to be grilled anyway, but it's over the handling of the Schofield affair, but also claims that the younger colleague with whom he has admitted an affair received a financial settlement, a payoff from the broadcaster, and no doubt had to sign a non-disclosure agreement as well. Well, let's try and get to the bottom of all this with Amanda Devlin. She's assistant showbiz editor at The Sun. Good morning to you.
Good morning. Sorry for stealing your seat.
It gets nasty. It gets nasty. Be careful. We'll protect you. We'll get you armed guards, Kathleen Stock style, on the way out. There's no doubt at all. Look, Holly and Phil are the big stars. They're the well-known names. So that's why Holly's on the front page of the newspaper. A much-loved figure. I have to say, I don't know why people are going for Holly Willoughby on this one at all. This is clearly a matter for Phillip Schofield and clearly a matter for senior executives at ITV, and lots of senior executives are being criticised, particularly the ITV chief exec herself, Carolyn McCall. Don't know how she gets by on a £3.5 million a year, but there are claims, basically that the execs knew what was going on, covered it up, and even signed off a nice big paycheck to the young man who had an affair with Phillip Schofield. What do we know for sure?
The thing is, in showbiz, in politics, an hour is a long time, but in showbiz, it feels like it's even longer. There's just so many things that are coming out day by day. It's really actually quite hard to keep up with it. Like I said, the front page of The Sun with Holly, she's determined to stay on. But because of the developing stories, we've got the payout and we've got this impending inquiry. I feel as if her coming on to the show on Monday, it just seems so unlikely. Even though she's defiant that she wants to.
All the showbiz experts have said they don't expect the show to survive and her to survive, but there are plenty of the jobs she could go on to. Is the show now, so the name of the show, is it so toxic that we know they've lost the sponsor, we know that they've been hemorrhaging viewers? Do you think that, but still a heck of a lot of viewers, by the way. Do you think that it's now too toxic and they're just going to do a new magazine show that has got a completely different name with completely different presenters?
I think so. I think that feels like the only option at the moment, because there's no star, and this is what we're finding out with this scandal. There's no star that's kind of bigger than the brand, and Holly and Phil have been this brand and kind of leading it for so long that when there's all this drama and scandal around them, we associate they are This Morning to us. I know that you have Alison come in, and I know that you have Dermot come in, but it predominantly is those two. And as a viewer, I personally feel quite troubled that we've been lied to for a long time.
Well, that's the thing.
We're watching it, and it's all happy families.
But that's the thing. The reason why this is more serious than perhaps other people on television is if the shtick is we're a lovely happy family, and there were two married couples with kids who went on holiday together, etc., etc. But let's leave that bit aside, because to a certain extent that is showbiz tittle tattle, that side of things, isn't it? When it comes to decision making by ITV executives, that has much more significance. Because ITV executives get to decide what we see on TV. They got to decide things like what news we saw, say, during the pandemic, or questions were asked. They have been able to decide who is on our screens and who isn't. We know, my colleague Piers Morgan ousted from GMB simply for saying he didn't believe a word that Meghan Markle said. Well, neither does anyone else these days. He was completely right. They were wrong. Now, it does seem that there are people who are basically thrown under the bus because they don't have the correct views, and there are some people who are protected. Was there a cover-up?
That's what it feels like. And that's scary, and that's the dark side of this fairy tale, that lovely happy family that we were talking about seeing on screen, and why it's important that this is exposed. Because yes, it might just be about Phil and what he's done in his personal life, but if it means that this has been covered up, which I just can't see a way out of, when you're talking about the taxis, someone had to know. Also,
the question the taxis. This is about this young lover staying at one of Philip Schofield's apartments, flats in central London, and then he would be Holly arriving in a cab paid for by ITV from Phillip Schofield's address. Well, someone signed off on that.
Exactly. And also, we don't know why Holly and Phil actually fell out in the first place. They've not sort of said anything about that.
Don't you think it's about his brother Tim Schofield, and that she didn't know that he'd actually was aware that his brother had told him about some aspects of the abuse?
And that's what we kind of understand from the sidelines, but they've not opened up about that. And it's just been such crazy timing that everything has spiralled since that point.
Well, there are also lots of claims, aren't there, that, I mean, Calvin Mackenzie is claiming that the chief executive attended a meeting of the tabloid newspaper and knew about Phillip Schofield's private life and his sexuality. And again, it's none of my business who Phillip Schofield is sexually attracted to. I couldn't care less, except where, of course, there is an issue where, and that's a matter for him and his wife, you know.
And you have to think of her in this situation.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't you? It must be very, very difficult.
The whole thing must be horrific, and the kids as well. But more importantly, if he's in a position of power in a studio, and the big star in the studio is basically brings someone in who he's met when he was 15 years old, and we know that's the first picture of Phillip Schofield with the 15-year-old. He then, at a theatre school, he then has got a job at 18. He's having a relationship with him. We don't know when the relationship started. Phillip Schofield insists it was always legal. Does he mean 16? Does he mean 18? He said, you're unwise, but not unlawful. But the question is, he's the big star. He's having a relationship with a much junior colleague. That's just not acceptable in the modern workplace. If that was known, and it appears it was known by everyone, and we understand, you know, Dan Wootton's been saying there was an email. He's got an email from a This Morning staffer who left, no axe to grind, didn't leave under bad circumstances, but he'd written to executives years ago saying, you need to investigate this. People are very uncomfortable about this. We're unsure about this power relationship. If executives failed to act, then do they have to go? And which ones? Martin Frizzell, executive producer. There's Kevin Ligo. He's the ITV daytime, I think. And then you've got the chief. I mean, there are 4 or 5 names.
McCall's definitely the one that needs to go. But I do think all the other ones, Martin Frizzell, I mean, that they're so in it. They're the ones that are day-to-day seeing Holly and Phil, know what's going on, have that kind of control and power. It just feels as if they've had this kind of power for too long. It's gone to their heads. They felt as if actually this is the whole show is about them, and they're forgetting that they were holding politicians to account. They had, we had the Prime Minister on this morning last week.
The Prime Minister doesn't come on my show anymore, but it'll go on the sofa this morning
for an easy ride, a bit of a softer touch. But he'll go on there, and if they're allowed to sit there and criticise other people, we need to know that everything is above board at ITV, and that's the issue. And I think that there needs to be a clear out. I think there will be a clear out. I don't think it can go on. And Holly, she's being very determined, and I think that she's being optimistic about coming back on Monday.
I don't think her career's over though at all. I don't think it is.
I
really think she shouldn't be tarred with the same brush.
If she hasn't done anything wrong, then absolutely her career shouldn't. But there is a sort of endpoint of that she's associated with that on This Morning with Phil. It's time to move on.
It's Holly and Phil. That's the thing. Well, it was Phil and Holly. Now it seems to have changed. Tom Slater, I don't think you give 2 hoots about what happens on daytime telly, and understandably so. But ITV executives were due to attend the Culture Select Committee and answer questions about other issues at a committee hearing next week when Parliament returns. They will no doubt be asked about this next week. Now, the key thing about parliamentary committees, it's sort of quasi-judicial. Yeah. You're not, if you lie to Parliament, that's effectively, parliamentary committee is Parliament, that is effectively perjury. You can actually be punished. Now, it's going to be on TV. Everyone's going to be watching. Lots of people who know an awful lot are going to be watching. If they say anything that's not true, I mean, it's going to be found out and exposed, and they aren't going to survive. Do you think heads will roll before that set committee hearing so that they can say, X has gone, they accept responsibility and try and save a few scalps that way?
You would think if even a fraction of what is being alleged against ITV bosses at the moment is true, that they will want to do something like this to avoid the kind of filleting that could take place otherwise, because of the fact that these stories just don't add up. This idea that we had an investigation and essentially we asked both of them and they both said no, and then
the younger man claims that he wasn't asked.
Exactly. Or almost every single aspect of this story is starting to unravel to a certain extent, and I think that's the problem, is that it's as ever, it's not necessarily crime or indiscretion in this case, it's cover-up, and that's what seeming is.
But also on the other issues, I'll come back to you on this, Amanda, is, you've got people like the chief executive of ITV, Carolyn McCall. I mean, she used to be editor of the Guardian newspaper. She's very, very woke. It's all about diversity and inclusion, all of that. And if it is the case that she has overseen, whether directly herself or indirectly, a company which has covered up a totally inappropriate relationship, some people talk about, a power relationship with from an older man and a much younger man, and has paid people off and covered up, that just exposes abject hypocrisy, doesn't it?
And that's what we're fed up of. Viewers are fed up of hypocrisy. And it just, I don't know whether they think that because of the Q-Gate scandal and them getting through that, and they did, I don't think
they did anything wrong. I just don't...
Really?
No. Oh. Every journalist in Britain did exactly the same thing. They just weren't on camera when they did it.
Susanna Reid was in the queue. She
was with her mum because she couldn't take her mum in otherwise. and by the way, David Beckham, sue me. I do not believe that you queued for 8 hours. The idea that David Beckham could have stood in a queue behind me for 8 hours and I didn't spot one of the most famous men in the world. Oh, give me a break.
But I think you were in the minority, because I think actually a lot of the people who were watching were really furious about it, because they wanted to go and see.
The vast majority of people in this country give not two hoots. Not one hoot. Not even an iota of one tiny bit of a huff of the hoot.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree.
Stand to ground on that.
Don't want to fall out this time in the morning.
She's come all this way as well. Okay, just finally, if you have to make predictions, Holly Willoughby, you think not back on the screen, even though she thinks she is, and you think heads are going to roll before next week?
Oh, absolutely. They have to. They can't go into that committee with nothing having changed. Okay. They tried to make it that Phillip was going to take the fall, but others have got to. I think what Holly's doing now is she's fighting to be the one that doesn't have to take the fall, and that it's more of the execs behind the scenes.
You know, one of the key things when we talk about this is that you always talk about Holly and Phillip because they are household names. I'm always very aware, my parents, if they're up at this time, I haven't got a clue who these people are.
Yeah.
Literally don't know who I'm talking about.
But when you've invited,
they are so well known.
There are a lot of people that they're in your home every morning, and throughout the pandemic, they were that kind of
I'm in
normality.
Your home right now. Call me on to Julia. I'm in your home right now. Amanda Devlin, great to have you on the show. Assistant showbiz editor at The Sun. Busy week for you guys.